Good evening, I'm Jose Cardenas. A conference in the Valley focuses on educational equity. We'll have a roundtable discussion on striving to close the achievement gaps here in Arizona and hear from a program advancing first-generation college students up the ladder. Tonight, all this coming up next on Horizonte.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station.
Thank you for joining us. This week, the Arizona School Boards Association is hosting a conference in Phoenix called the Equity Event. It's a first of its kind event for public education, community policy leaders, and school board members from Arizona and around the nation. The sessions will focus on education equity. Joining me to talk about striving towards educational equity in Arizona are Tracy Benson, Associate Executive Director for the Arizona School Boards Association, Paul Luna, President and CEO for Helios Foundation, Adriana Figueroa, Director of Multicultural Community Engagement for Expect More Arizona. Thank you all for joining us on our show. Tracy, you guys are the prime sponsors of the School Boards Association. And I just want to make clear for our viewers that some of this event will have already taken place by the time the show airs on Thursday. It kicks off when?
Kicks off on Wednesday and runs through Friday.
And Wednesday, there's a particular focus on Native Americans?
There is. Our Wednesday pre-conference focuses on looking at Native American students and the factors that need to be in place in order for them to see improved outcomes and successes.
And when we talk about equity, we mean equity in what sense? Is it everything should be the same for everybody, or what are you talking about?
When we're talking about educational equity, it's really not about everything being equal for everyone. The only thing that would be equal would be those high expectations that we have for all students. But it's really about looking in differences in opportunity and achievement among various student groups and making sure that we have the programs and the practices and the policies in place that make sure every student can rise to the occasion.
And Adriana, I want to ask you, what's Expect More Arizona's involvement in this? But before that, just a little bit about Expect More Arizona.
Yeah, so we are a nonprofit. We work across the state of Arizona to create, give opportunity for students to have access to quality education.
And so in this particular event, what will be your focus?
Yeah, so the work that we do at Expect More Arizona focuses on working with parents and communities and helping them understand what are some of those opportunities that are in schools, and if the opportunities are not available, what are some of the questions and what are some of the information that they need in order to be able so that their children have access to those opportunities.
So Paul, as I understand it, this event is appealing to a lot of groups. And one of the communities is the nonprofit community. What the nonprofit community can do to address these issues. Helios is probably first and foremost in terms of addressing these issues. What do you expect to come out of this, and what is the role of nonprofits?
Well, Jose, I think from a Helios Education Foundation perspective, number one, we're very proud to partner with the Arizona School Boards Association to have such an important topic discussed in our state. When you think about the priorities of the state of Arizona and what will drive the future success of our state, it really comes down to education. And in the case of Arizona, when you recognize the changing demographics in our state, you have to understand that with the changing population of students, that equity is the key for education success. From Helios' perspective, we believe fundamentally that every student, regardless of where they're born, where they live, who their parents are, how much money they should have access to a quality education. So this idea and concept of how do we as a state ensure that every student has that access to the quality education is really the most important aspect of education that we need to be focused on.
So Tracy, I take it we wouldn't be having this event unless we thought there was an equity gap. Can you give us some sense of how severe it is in Arizona and what the measures might be, rural versus urban, and then inner city versus other kinds of schools in the state?
Well, we can look at equity in a variety of ways. One of them might be through an academic lens, and we have data that shows us that certain student groups, Native American students, Hispanic students, Black students, aren't performing at the same levels as Caucasian peers. And so that's one way we can look at it. We can also look at equity in terms of access, and children who are attending schools in rural communities may not have access to some of the high-level math courses or foreign language or some of the high-level science courses that they need and that are expectations maybe in more urban communities. So it's really about looking at all of those variables and saying, what do we need to do to make sure that the students who need these opportunities in order to succeed at high levels have them?
So we have a special focus, at least the first day, on Native Americans. Adriana, you're in charge of multicultural opportunities. What does that mean for a population as distinct as the Native American population? And are we talking about Native Americans in the tribal schools or as they're attending schools here in Phoenix area, for example?
I think it's both. I believe there's definitely a difference in between the students who are attending a school in a rural community, regardless of whether or not they are in the Native American community, they're Latino students. And if they're attending the school in metropolitan Phoenix, also poverty is one of those issues that impacts them heavily. 1 in 4 of our kids in Arizona are living in poverty, and the access and the quality of education they have access to differs dramatically.
But what is it that school boards, that's a big part of your audience, right?
Absolutely.
What can school board members do about those kinds of issues? They seem to be pretty pervasive and broader and perhaps beyond the ability of a school board to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. School boards, to me, are probably have the biggest impact in a community. When you talk about efforts in organizing, there's nothing, a school board member can determine what programs are available, how do they better distribute funds, and they can better support educators, beginning with their superintendents, and then principals, and then teachers, having access to different programs.
So part of it is just better deploying the assets that they do have.
Absolutely. They play a critical role in our community and in education.
Paul, we just had the budget passed. Governor says it was an increase in funding for K-12. Many people disagree with that. How do you give an encouraging message to school board members and the other people who will be attending, teachers and so forth, that there is something they can do, even though I think most of them would think these are still pretty tough times? You got schools thinking of going on a 4-day schedule.
Sure. And I think the reality is it is tough times for education in Arizona. And we have to look and talk about investment in education. And I think that's an important term. It's investment. Too often what we see and what we've seen happening in Arizona around funding of education is it's being looked at like it's an expense. And we believe strongly that education is an investment in the future. And so we have to talk about that. But just as importantly, I think it is ensuring that we start to have this discussion and dialogue around the concept of equity, and not just from an education or from a school perspective. We're talking about the importance of the school boards and the role that they play, and it is critically important. But I think as much this conference is about ensuring that this dialogue around every student getting a quality education is a community discussion. It's about parents and families and communities and schools coming together with the understanding that we all have a vested interest as a state to ensure that every student has an opportunity to succeed in education, and especially after high school, in some type of post-secondary education, because an educated workforce will drive the future of the state of Arizona. It will drive our economy forward. And so this issue of equity in education is one that is far beyond any one issue of just funding or any program or policy. It's about changing the culture that we value every student being successful.
And I know Helios is particularly concerned about the Latino population. And we had the Morris Institute's report dropped and other things indicating that that group doesn't do good. None of us do. How much of that is going to be addressed in this conference?
I think talking about the reality of the demographics of our state and the changing demographics, when you recognize that right now in the K-12 education system, the majority of students are now kids of color. And it's not to suggest that we care about any one type of student than the other. Again, we care about all students, but we have to recognize that with the changing demographics of our student population, the needs and the challenges and the supports that they require to be successful are changing and evolving as well. And so we have to come together as a community to discuss and understand how can we better support and prepare these students for educational success. And I think that's what we're trying to make sure we're having open, honest dialogue about. And we're also starting to understand what are others doing. We're going to have speakers that come in. The keynote speaker to kick off the conference is the superintendent from Miami-Dade Schools in Miami, Florida, Alberto Carvalho, who is the 2014 National Superintendent of the Year, primarily because of work that they've been able to do to close the achievement gap between students of color and non-ethnic students of color in the Miami-Dade schools. And the demographics of Miami-Dade, much like the state of Arizona, are a future of what the entire country is going to look like from a demographic perspective. And so we need to see and understand what they're doing in Miami to ensure academic success for their students, and how do we apply that to the state of Arizona.
So Tracy, we talked about what's going to happen on Wednesday. What will attendees see? What can they partake of on Thursday and Friday?
Well, as Paul said, they'll hear from experts and people who have real experience in equity and have been really leading the charge in their communities. People from around the country, but also Arizona leaders who are making real progress in their school districts and in their communities in the area of equity. So it's really about promising practices and programs and putting those on display so school board members, school leaders, and other community leaders can see exactly what they are, and really talking about leadership strategies to say, how do we go out in our community and talk about this equity issue? Make sure parents understand what it means. Make sure business leaders understand what it means. So that critical piece of leadership and how school boards really do play into that. You know, they're elected representatives of their community, so they're in a unique position to bridge that gap between those who are in their community, the public, and the school system. So that's really what we're hoping to, at the end of the day, get out of this event. And that is that communication that's going back and forth between those two groups, and also the other organizations within communities like Helios and Expect More Arizona that can be brought in as resources and in many cases leaders of that work.
So Adriana, how do you get the parents to attend something like this? I would think most parents, especially if we're talking about some of the immigrant parents and others, would be intimidated attending some of these meetings. What are you doing to get them there?
Jose, you'll be amazed by giving parents a little bit of knowledge and just getting them enough information opens up a door. I have seen parents attend not just events like this, but parents get engaged in elections. Parents are eager for more information. Parents want to know what is the power that they have as parents, and where do they fit, how they can make better choices for their student.
Paul, last question. Good start.
It's a fabulous
Lots
start.
of information. What happens next?
I think it's about understanding. Again, we talked about changing the culture, raising the awareness of the issue of equity, and then beginning to take that into action. Because at the end of the day, if all we do is talk about this, then we're really not going to be impacting students. So the key is with better understanding, with an understanding of the best practices, what others have been doing that have proven successful in ensuring that students are succeeding, all students are succeeding, then we as Arizona, through this, everybody playing a role, need to then be able to move to action to ensure that we're delivering on that promise of a quality education for every student in Arizona.
Sounds like a great conference. Thank you all so much for joining us on Horizonte to talk about it.
Thank you.
Best of
Jose.
luck. The Department of Transportation recently named Sky Harbor as the #1 airport in the country for small business growth. In the last 2 years, 14 businesses, mostly restaurants, have opened their doors at the airport. Producer Shauna Fisher and photographer Scott Olson profiled 2 of these local establishments.
It's the perfect recipe. Combine good food with good service, and the people will come.
Cervezas is a take on a European gastropub, but fueled with Mexican food. We call it a gastro cantina.
Gonzalo de la Melena opened Cervezas in Terminal 4 2 years ago. He says the keys to success at the airport are simple.
Speed of service is paramount in the airport business. Portability and convenience is also critical. People usually have just a couple of few minutes before they have to get to their flights. So what makes operating in the airport different is that mindset of speed of service. We've driven our speed of service down to 3 minutes or less in order to accommodate the traveling passenger.
Over in the B Gates area, Helen Young and her business partner operate Sweet Republic, an artisan ice cream shop.
Because ice cream is all about traffic flow. We need lots of foot traffic, and there's no more foot traffic than there is at the airport. And we have a lot of people been asking us to, bring our concept to other locations.
Young says the portability of her ice cream, served in cups, cones, or shakes, makes it appealing for travelers. Open since March 2014, Young says she has already seen a tremendous difference in airport food offerings.
People are a lot more excited to come early to the airport and actually have a good time, have a good meal before getting on the plane.
Airport spokesperson Julie Rodriguez says Sky Harbor made a conscious effort to attract small businesses, and it worked.
We have had tremendous feedback, and social media is a really good gauge. Lots of positive tweets and Facebook posts about how great our food is. People are pleasantly surprised when they get near their gate and they find a favorite local restaurant, maybe a restaurant that may have an hour wait in another part of the city. They can walk right in and enjoy here at Sky Harbor.
Mike Dixon is one of 100,000 passengers that pass through Sky Harbor every day. He says the airport is a great way to connect with local businesses and get an idea of a city.
What's interesting to me is to be able to see what local things are going on. So if you can catch that at the airport, that's kind of fun, because I'm not leaving the airport. I'm going to fly out in an hour, but if I get a flavor of what Phoenix is like, that's kind of cool.
Terminal 4 now has everything from a rib joint to soul food to full-service restaurants. De La Melena says when small businesses thrive at the airport, it's good news for the state's economy, too.
Small business ownership is really driving our economy for the state of Arizona. If you think about 97% of all jobs in the state of Arizona are small business owned. There's 400,000 small businesses, of which 100,000 are minority owned, growing at a rate 4 times faster. So the future growth of Arizona is really dependent on our ability to get more women and minority-owned businesses access to capital, contracts, and owning their own business. It's really the future.
The airport will soon be revamping its retail offerings in Terminal 4, followed by a rehaul of food and retail businesses in Terminal 3.
Here at Horizonte, we want to hear from you. If you have comments, story ideas, or questions, email us at horizonte@asu.edu.
ASU has started a new program helping first-generation college students that emphasizes the opportunities and benefits to advancing to graduate school. Here to talk about the program are Lindsay Romasanta, Assistant Director at ASU's First Year Success Center, and Lori Mook, Assistant Professor for ASU School of Community and Resources Development. Thank you both for joining us on our show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Lori, this wasn't just something you thought, well, this would be a good thing to do. There's probably a problem. You did a lot of research to establish the need. Tell us about that.
Well, ASU has a very high number of first-generation students. Probably about 40% of our undergraduate students are first-generation.
And you define that a certain way,
yes,
right?
Yes. First-generation student is a student that's come from a household where the parents have not completed a university education. So it could be
both of them.
Both of
Neither
them.
parent.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Or if they're in a single-family household, the parent that they are living with. So yes, so we created this program. There's a lot of first-generation students, and we also found out that in terms of graduation rates, if you compare the first-generation students to non-first-generation students, there's a significantly lower rate of graduation for that group as well.
And I think we can probably intuit why that might be, but is there anything specific, differences that you notice in between the kids who have role models, basically, of parents who've succeeded at this and those who haven't?
Yes, well, first of all, their families quite often aren't able to help them navigate the university system. That's one thing. Quite often they have to work during their undergraduate years as well. So there's a lot going on there. They're not aware of all of the resources available, and often they're reluctant to talk to faculty and actually seek out mentors. They don't know how to do that, what the resources are. So we thought it would be great to have a program that would kind of demystify this journey. And we did that by inviting first-generation faculty members to come and share their stories and their backgrounds and their challenges, to kind of connect with the students, because they came from similar places, they had similar experiences, and it was quite inspirational for the students to hear those stories.
So Lindsay, you're involved in this program, this
yes.
particular effort, but as part of your job in the First Year Success Center, you've been dealing with some of this already. What kinds of things do you do?
Yeah, definitely. So at the First Year Success Center, we have a one-on-one coaching program in which we match successful upperclassmen with first-year students. In the freshman class, similar to the statistics that Lori talked about 1 in 3 are the first in their families to go to college, and additionally about 1 in 4 come from low-income families. So looking at that, we knew that it was really important to target that peer-to-peer approach approach and connect students that have navigated the ASU system before and get them to talk to these freshmen who are the first in their families to go to college, to inform them of the resources, but most importantly to celebrate the important achievement that they're doing as the students who are the first in their families to go to college. It's also a pride piece, and ASU is committed to making sure that those students succeed.
Now, one thing that's a little bit different about this effort is the focus on getting these students to stay in school, not just to get their bachelor's degree, but to go on to graduate school.
Definitely.
Why that? I mean, it would seem that you got your hands full already with just
Sure.
keeping them in school, getting their bachelor's.
Yeah, definitely. So we know that graduate aspirations meets the needs of not only the economy, but it also meets the needs of the potential dreams of those students. A lot of them had never considered going to college before. So thinking about that next step is what we're thinking a great way to get those students to persist. We know that you need a bachelor's degree to move on to that next step. So connecting those students to the understanding of the potential power of having a graduate degree or even a doctoral degree can do so much. I know for me, I'm the first in my family to go to college, and I'm also now in a doctoral program. And I remember thinking, wow, like, is this even possible? Can I make this happen? And it's working so far.
So Lori, how did you convince other people, or professors who are already very successful and presumably very busy, to get involved in this? What was it that appealed to them?
It really didn't take any convincing at all. I think everybody we talked to was really excited about this program, including also first-generation graduate students. We also invited graduate students to come and mentor at the event as well. We had lunch tables where we had tables of 10 students sit with a graduate student who was also a first-generation student and share their stories and talk about resources and how they were successful. But really, we had so many people interested. We had too many people interested for the event. We had to actually tell some people that we didn't have places for them, volunteer spots for them to participate.
And how do you make sure that the experiences are relevant? So, for example, the graduate students would be closer in age, but some of the professors you've seen, or that I've seen in the list, the age difference would be a little different, and I'm not sure that their experiences as a first generation a student going to undergraduate school
yeah,
would
the faculty
be
were
relevant.
recommended to us, so we already knew they had interesting stories and stories that were relevant to the undergraduate population.
What kind of feedback did you get afterwards as to ways in which you might improve the program?
Have more of them. The students were saying they wish there were about 50% of the students were seniors, and they were saying we wish we had this earlier on. We initially want to target a sophomore, around the sophomore second year student, because we know it can make quite a difference, and do this kind of every year so that every year they can get sort of this booster shot and be recommitted to their educational experience and really connect.
And as I understand, a further aspect of this targeting is this first effort was kind of university-wide. You want to focus on particular colleges
definitely.
now.
Sure. So what worked really well for us is we were able to get faculty from multiple disciplines. So we had someone that is in engineering, someone with liberal arts, someone who's a vice provost. That we were really conscious of how can these backgrounds match the aspirations and also the interests of the students that were there. We also looked at matching the graduate students with the disciplines that the undergrads were interested in, so that during those table conversations they could ask, hey, how did you get your master's in business administration? Or what's the process for becoming a physical therapist? All these different things. So we know that that heuristic knowledge, that local connection can make a difference, and I think it worked really well in this event.
And I can understand what Lori was talking about in terms of the seniors saying, I wish I'd had this before, but do you also need to tailor it for the different levels? So for example, I would think your freshmen might not be thinking of graduate school, might be focused, and perhaps properly so, on just, I want to make it through this first year.
Sure, definitely. I think that planting the seed, no matter how early it is important. Some of the ways that we tailored or cultivated the program is looking at what are the different pathways to get to grad school. So besides the inspiration, how do you actually do it? And what are some relevant experiences you could get in undergraduate, no matter what year you are, whether it's study abroad, volunteering, that can make you stand out and make your graduate application even better. So I think planting those seeds can happen even as a first-time freshman.
I realize it may be a little premature to ask about success stories, but do you have any yet?
There were some comments from students in the audience, a few comments, students that were a little unsure and even sounded like they may have wanted to give up at that point, but were really reinvigorated and found the inspiration to continue. Another student was, a senior student was graduating and then intended to go on to graduate school, but then also stated that she wanted to make as her topic of study first-generation students.
We're almost out of time. How will you measure success going forward?
We are, at the event, we did a survey pre and post to the event, so we're looking at the changes and aspirations before and after the event, and then we hope to follow the students into the future as well.
And then just one last question, how many students total are you hoping to reach, and what's the percentage of students that we've got there?
Wow, I think it's endless. You know, there's an infinite amount of first-generation students at ASU, and the potential to continue to cultivate their dreams and aspirations. I think we'll go however it is that we need to do.
So you've got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Horizonte.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
That is our show for tonight. From all of us here at 8 in Horizonte, thank you for watching. I'm Jose Cardenas. Have a good evening.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station.